Morning, everybody. We're just going to wait another 60 seconds and just get everybody to join and settle down, and then we'll get started. Okay, let's get started. Good morning, everyone. For those of you that don't know me, I am Neville Cousins. I am with BPESA, and I head up the special projects team, as well as the digital and ITO development within BPESA. Today, I'm pleased to introduce to you Dion Besson. Dion is the CEO of Recinate and the chairman of Spatialedge. Dion has over 25 years of experience decoding how communication shapes behavior and business performance. He's a pioneer in strategic communication. Dion now leads the charge in applying AI to transformation of how organizations engage, how they decide, and how they deliver at scale. His work bridges behavioral insights and intelligent systems, turning complex data into clarity and impact. At the intersection of human intelligence and machine learning, Dion helps leaders develop beyond AI hype towards practical, high ROI outcomes. So Dion, thank you for joining me today. I know you've got something very exciting to share with us. And so without any further delays, I'm going to hand over to you, Dion.
Thanks for that, Neville. Thanks for the introduction also. Today we're going to definitely talk about what is really happening in AI. It's such a hype at the moment, a lot of people talking about it. And not everybody knows exactly what it's about. And we hear a lot of stories about, major advances by organizations. We also hear people losing a lot of money at the same time. There are some realities, and that's what I'd like to share with you today. What are those realities taking place in AI today? AI is not a new concept, even though, we think it's a new concept. Uh, I'm not going to give away my age, but in 1985, I already did AI as a subject at university. So it's definitely not a brand new subject. However, there has been some major improvements, and also the amount of data and technology deployed today are far more than those days that I'm talking about now. So today I really want to talk about, the age of intelligence, why companies win or fail in the age of AI, and want to make sure that I can share a little bit about what really creates success, but also on the other side, what potentially could be a failure in the organization. There is no doubt AI is here to stay. It's going to stay here for a long time. In fact, I say for a long time, it's going to be here forever. Uh, to try and get intelligence out of the data in your organization, or to use technology and improve, for example, customer service, create things like chatbots and intelligent chatbots, and some other examples I will use a little bit later. So, let me share with you just what I'd like to cover today. I'm going to talk about the growth in AI, and there's been a tremendous growth. You'll see it, and the prediction also for the next 20 years is quite phenomenal, what they say is going to happen there. Then I'd like to share with you some success stories that's already happened. But then I want to dive a little bit deeper into reality check on, things that are not working, and why people are going wrong in it. I will then introduce a sensible approach to how can you actually realize value from AI. I'm not saying it's fault proof, but it's a much, much higher chance of actually getting success out of it. And finally, I will talk about the benefits that this approach will bring to you. So if we start with firstly, what is the growth in AI? And you can switch on the TV today, and nearly every channel in some way will talk about AI at some stage. We're experiencing AI even on our mobile phones that we use. Things like, for example, voice to text, and sometimes even more intelligent than that. And that's all a bit of AI that we're using on a daily basis without even knowing it. But first, I want to talk about the growth in general. And this is some information from Gartner and some of the other research companies like IDC say very, very similar numbers. And you can see there that the growth from 2025 to 2030 is absolutely phenomenal. We're talking about a 6 to 7 times increase in spending on what people do on AI. Came, from a low base in 2015 on 6.5 and $4 billion being spent on it, and it's going to go all the way up to $826 billion being spent in this space. So it's not a small number; it's a huge number. So it's definitely being taken seriously by organizations out there. If we look at the just on the BPO side, we can see a similar type growth, and you can see between 2025 and 2030, we're talking about a 3 times growth in terms of that. And we talk here about in dollars, which means if we talk about that in a rand situation, we must probably talk about 5 times more spent in rand terms between 2025 and 2030. And it's not going to slow down in any way. So that's very much for the BPO space. And if we only look at the call center space, we see again very similar numbers showing a growth of also about 3 times from 2025 to 2030. A really phenomenal growth that we're seeing taking place at the moment. Most of the venture capital guys are investing into AI in some way or other. It's being implemented across the board in big organizations, in governments, in nearly every part of our life. They're implementing AI in some way or other. So that's just a little bit of background, but I want to take you back to that first one, and you can see the AI here. It's super rich, and it could even be higher. Then we see there it could be that suddenly they find new ways of generating more revenue or reducing the cost, and we could even see that number being higher than the number that you see there. So as I said, phenomenal growth in what we talk about here. Okay, so I'd like to quickly talk about 1 or 2 success stories that we've seen already being done out there. And there are many success stories in this space. And the first one I'd like to talk about is if we talk about Amazon. Amazon, 35% of Amazon sales come from AI-powered product recommendations. And that means there's some intelligence that's been created that the system teaches itself about every consumer that comes to that specific, while they're shopping on Amazon. It will actually identify this, the trend of the person, this is what the person like, this is their spending pattern on the other side, and use all of that information on the fly, recommend something to the person. And you can understand that, that is not just giving a person a random ad sitting there in Amazon, but it's very much related to their past purchases on the one side, and even their spending patterns that they've got as a consumer. So Amazon uses this extensively to identify or promote new things to the customer on the fly. Another organization, one of the big telcos in South Africa, they do 400,000 recommendations per day to customers out there. It's also done on the fly. As the person sign on or use something, they'll get a recommendation on something. Maybe it's buying a bit more data, maybe it's an upgrade that they can do. Whatever the situation is, it'll know something about that person and make a recommendation. We know that in the past, these recommendations would have been a generic one. So, there's a new cell phone that comes out, and now I promote the cell phone. In this case that I talk about here, I actually know about your spending patterns. I even know that, how much data you use, how many calls you make, what apps do you use on the other side. And based on that, I can make some recommendations to you. Then we look at something like Vodafone. 60% of customer service chats handled by AI with 40% resolution, which means if you take those two numbers, 24% of customer service calls are now being handled completely by AI. And the resolution, that's why I say 24%, 60% or 40%. So that means 24% are not done by humans at all. It's to the finalization of that call that actually will get to a resolution for that call. And there are many other examples like this. We see this in the banking environment. We see this in the insurance environment, in retail. Nearly in every area, people are implementing in some way, some intelligence that customer service can be done automated without any human intervention. The next one I want to talk about is in healthcare, also playing a major role. You can see there where in 30 countries, they've changed the way that cancer treatment can be done, and they've reduced the suggestion from 8 hours to under 20 minutes. You take over 8 hours. Now, under 20 minutes, that person has already got some suggestions. There are other examples like that. Even in telco, where they have to spend a lot of money in terms of putting new capital infrastructure out there, like the towers and everything like that. It used to take them 6-7 months to plan those things. And now they've got it literally in the press of a button. They know where to deploy new towers because the data is being ingested the whole time and being analyzed the whole time. So really, it's being used across the board in many, many industries. I will use a little bit of examples a little bit later of how other companies are getting benefit from it. If we take it one step further, and what we've seen lately are even things like I can automate my claim. So everything is done automated when I put in a claim, let's say for insurance. All the questions will be asked to me, and I will answer it, and the system will automatically analyze that claim and also then make a decision. The final decision will still be with a human, but the process of getting all the information, analyze it, and making a decision will all be automated. Another company that I know of, they've got call center agents that are in sales, and while they're having the discussion with a person, the system will automatically start generating the contract for that person as the information becomes available, and even start applying some AI on that to say, is it a good contract or not a good contract? Is it something we should flag and maybe send it to a human? And even conclude the contract, in real time with a person. There's also been a lot of work done if we think about whether you're sitting with a person in person or whether it's online. One of the things that we do, let's say, for example, you're a doctor and you're seeing a patient, and now you're having a discussion with a patient, and you start recording what's being said. It's not only recording, it's also the ability on the fly, take that voice, convert it to text, and that's the first level of AI, is that ability to convert that to text. But the next level of that is not just to create a text, it's to identify data inside the text that you've just generated. We pick up things like, for example, that is the first name. Oh, that is the surname. Oh, that is the ID number. Oh, these are the symptoms. Let's say you're in a doctor situation. And while you're having that discussion, you're actually generating the entire conversation, is generating all the data that's required for putting in, say, in the medical field, putting in a claim. It will generate you, and at the end of the call, even say to you, you haven't asked the person, I'm going to make this up, you haven't asked the person his medical aid. And the system will tell you that, actually, I'll be discussing it with the person, writing down nothing. The one project that's being done at the moment in the US with a medical doctor, where it normally takes them 20 minutes after every patient that they see actually generate all the information that's required for the claims. They now reckon it's going to take them 2 minutes just to go through the data that's been generated by taking voice to text, using AI to identify data inside that text and start populating the field, and on the fly being able to tell the doctor these are the questions that you have not yet asked. I spoke about the capital expenditure. I saw this also. It sounds like a small thing, but when you start to talk about capital expenditure, and let me take a very simple example. In a telco, let's say you've got two towers, and both of those towers are 120% utilized, which means they're both dropping calls as the, because of 120% utilized. And it'll cost the same money to upgrade both of them. Now, but I only have enough money to upgrade one of them. Then I make a decision which one should I upgrade. Now, what they do is they would take all the data that goes through each of the towers, who's the user that goes through the tower, what do they do on that, what is their package that they're on, and at the end of that, be able to say tower one is more profitable than tower two, create tower one. And that is something that makes a huge difference to an organization, and again, saving telco companies billions by making the right decision about what is the tower that should be upgraded in a situation like that. Workforce planning, we all know the situation of um, when do we need people on the floor, when do we need people in the factory, and making the right decisions as demand go up or go down, and do that decision making on the fly, actually plan it ahead. Use data from the past and predicting into the future to understand what is the typical workforce that I need at a certain point in time. Um, Interesting project that was done also in the States was one where AI was used in the process of hiring new people. And by checking certain parameters, they could identify what's the propensity of someone to actually leave or resign sooner than than the norm would be. And by looking at a couple of questions that they ask and looking at the data that they get from that, they could then have a much higher chance of appointing someone with a lower propensity to resign. And they've reduced the people leaving, or people leaving the company, from 13% per year down to 9% just by applying something very simple like that, which is quite a big impact on that organization. Predictive maintenance, sometimes we need to understand where do we need what. For example, in a mining environment, they all use these massive tires, and you need to make sure that the tire at the right time at the right place. Otherwise, you find one of these massive monster trucks standing, not being able to operate because one of the tires went. And again, using some AI to determine where do we need that stock. In retail, a massive thing, demand forecasting. How much should we produce? How much should we send to each of the stores out there? Of what size, of what color, of whatever other um, information we need about that. But at the end of the day, it's deciding about what's the right stuff to send to the right environment and even what to produce at the right time. And at the same time, in this demand forecasting, you might have things like predicting what each store will need, putting it all together and have that again to order from, let's say you order from China, what should you order from them in that? And then the examples go on forever. There are so many examples of AI being used today all over the place. And as I said, it's going to take over a lot of functions that we do. The biggest thing is that we should think about how do we use it to our benefit and not to be scared of it. And that's one of the things that we see in the market today. A lot of people are scared of AI. They worry it's going to take over their job. And yes, a lot of jobs will be taken over, but you can also, if you skill yourself in the right way, you can make use of the AI to improve inside the organization. So I just want to share with you a little bit of a reality check. And so I just showed you the upside. The upside is the really huge benefits you can get from it, but there's also a downside to it. And the downside is, if we look at the research today, according to Gartner, 85% of AI projects ultimately fail. It's a huge number, which means nearly 9 out of 10 of the projects actually fail. They don't produce the value they said they're going to bring to the table. And they see that projects don't move past pilot phase or don't even scale to the level it should be. That's a frightening number, but it's a reality today. On the other side, IDC says 50% of AI initiatives are either abandoned or underperforming. So they've got a different number. It differs a bit from Gartner, but again, it's a huge number of the projects out there that are not succeeding today. And there are many reasons for it, which I'll share with you in a moment about that. MIT plan, only 11% of firms report significant financial benefits from AI despite widespread adoption. Now look again like that, 11%. So only 1 out of 10 firms report significant financial benefits from AI. Now, we speak the whole time about AI, and now we're a bit worried about it because is it what can happen to my organization? And I do believe there are major mitigating factors of how you can mitigate not falling into the trap of not delivering. And as I said earlier, there are major reasons why that's happening. VentureBeat says 87% of data science projects never make it into production due to infrastructure and deployment challenges. 87% of the projects never make it into production, which means, again, it's only about 1 in 10 that actually goes into production and that actually will deliver value. So the numbers are not great, certainly not great. However, as I said, there are some mitigating factors around that. So how do we make sure that we don't fall into the trap of what we saw in the year 2001, when we saw between about 1990 and 2001, it was all about the internet. And the internet going to change everything, and you need to put everything onto the internet. And in 2001, we had the major dot bomb, which means people did not get the value that they said they're going to get, and companies started actually not investing anymore into our internet side. And that was the first phase of the internet. And as we know today we can't do anything without the internet. But in 2001, we saw the dot bomb. ERP mega failures. You all know about the ERP implementations, where the companies, even here in South Africa, we hear about companies spending in the region of 1.82 billion rand for implementation of ERP, and not always seeing the value that they should be getting from that. And the final one, there's been this whole focus on IT modernization, and it was a black hole. A lot of promises were made, and people didn't really get the value that they want. And I'm saying, how do we make sure that we prevent that in AI? And we can. I've seen it in a company that I work with, where I'm the chairman. We've got the reverse numbers. We deliver about 90% of the projects that we take on. We deliver value inside organizations. I will share with you a bit of that, of how we actually get to that. Okay. I think, the first thing, why is this happening? I think the first thing is people think it's magic. AI is magic. You're just going to take the AI, put it in, and it's going to work. I'm going to save money. You actually need to put a bit of effort in. And I think also there's really there's a hype at the moment. People believe you're just going to buy the technology and now I'm going to get all the value. And we're not seeing that happening at the moment. The other one is that it's not a strategic initiative, and the visit buying is not that great. It needs to start at the top. This is so important for organizations. So if you don't start at the top, it's never going to work. You can't just drop it down to a much lower level. Hope it's going to happen. It's got to be driven from a strategic level, because it actually adds bottom line to the organization if done correctly. One of the other things that we also see, we see people, they start with a project, and if you say to them, how are you going to measure this? No, we must first do all the IT stuff and all the technology and get all the data and put it all in, and they don't get the value. And the wrong approach to think that you can just dive into AI. That's going to happen. We can't understanding what the business outcome will be for what you're doing. Inexperience is another one. A lot of time it sits in an organization where they just say, you guys, your project's not that busy at the moment. Why don't you start with AI? And they start implementing AI. And the inexperience also costs them quite a bit in terms of that. Poor communication, and it goes back to the top ones there, the strategic initiative. It's got to be communicated very well in the organization. And then finally, not being agile. Agile is critical. Because with AI, you never know what you're going to get. So to think that you can have this big plan of everything you're going to do, and then you're going to implement it, and it's going to give you the value. In AI, it works slightly different. You want small increments of value, then you iterate on that. And I'll share with you that in a moment, because you never know what you're going to get. It's not just an IT initiative. If you're just going to pass it on to IT, it might be an IT-focused initiative, and the business side might not be there. And these are the reasons that we see, why things are not really going in the way it should go when we talk about AI. Then the other one that we see, and it goes near to some of the other points above this, is that people will say, we're doing AI and we're buying technology and we're going to create this massive data lake of all our data of the organization in the data lake. And 2 years later, the companies still don't see value. We don't believe in that. We believe you've got to be agile and you've got to drive it from a business perspective. So it's not about the technology. It's not about this massive data lake that you create. And a lot of times that's driven by ego. I want the biggest data lake in the country, and that's why I'm doing this. The data lake itself doesn't give the value. The business focus side will actually generate the value at the end of the day. Technology decisions, it's more technology decision for people. And one of the things that we also see in AI, when you talk about reporting or just looking at data, looking backwards, and you are clearly generating reports on what happened in the past, and you give people technology to view that on. That's not AI. When you start predicting the future by looking at data and running models to predict the future, that's when you are really talking about AI. That's artificial intelligence. Just generating a report and using your data warehouse to generate reports is not AI, because you haven't applied any intelligence to that to actually help you with predicting the future. The other one that we also see is that a lot of times people don't have access to good data. And I put good data in quotes there, because a lot of times we find that the actual data that you need for AI is actually cleaner than if you just talk about the peripheral data. So if you go into this process of this massive data lake, there's a very good chance that you're going to spend so much time on creating good data, data that's never going to be used in the actual decision making. So we say, make sure that you identify the good data that you really want. And then we also see a lot of people are find things in test environments where they say, let's take some data, let's test it, and they see some of their models working, but then it never goes into production, and it's never ready for production. So it's nice to play with, but don't go into production, so it actually delivers business value. So these are the biggest things that we see why AI is failing in organizations, and why we see that massive spend and the failure in project of people trying to deliver AI projects in organizations. So let me talk a little bit about the more sensible approach. Create a roadmap of how to do this better in a way that you will most probably get success in your organization. Or let's put it this way, you're going to up the chances of success if you do it in a more sensible way. As I said earlier, it's not one of those things that you say, we're going to do big data, and you ask people, so how are you going to measure it? No one knows how they're going to measure it. That is the wrong approach. Okay, the first thing I want to say, it's driven from the top. It has to be driven from the top. It's so strategic to the organization that there's somebody that's got to be responsible from an exco perspective that, that will drive this in the organization. And the business side also understands, what it will take to actually implement it. There are even calls nowadays that they say that the person that's head of AI in your organization, there should be something on the board that takes responsibility for that. Ask the right questions about whether the organization is going in the right direction in terms of AI. The other point is change management is critical. People are fearful. And you might even find that they are so fearful about this AI because they're worried about their jobs that they counter the implementation of it. And that's not going to be to the benefit of your organization. So we need to make sure that we prepare the people for what's about to come. It can make their jobs better. There might be jobs lost, absolutely. But on the other side, those that will embrace AI will only become better inside their organization by using AI. And by using AI, you can do so much more in your organization. So, the benefit of it goes beyond just the cost potential saving. And then communication, this whole thing is critical. It's really, really critical. And it goes with the change management. Exco needs to communicate the whole time. What are we doing? Why are we implementing it? What's going to change in the organization? And if you don't do that, you're going to see it going in the wrong direction. And people will fight it and not really accept it. And don't start with let's implement AI without knowing what you want to do. You've got to know what is the value that you want to create from it. And I normally say start with a business case. And let me give you some business case or use case type examples on how you start with something like this. This is a typical use case. We want to reduce the average call time from 5 minutes and 36 seconds to 3 minutes and 39 seconds. There's a business case. How am I going to do it? I'd like to have all the information available to that agent while he's talking to the customer. And in that way, the call will go much faster. Not only that, and also even if there's suddenly a potential sell that I can make, I'll use the data to identify that this customer propensity to buy the following product is much higher, and in that way, it really empower agents. So that's one way of doing it. It could also be that you could say that I'd like to capture some data about this customer so that when the agent gets the customer, they already know a lot about that customer because the system has pre-populated that data for the person. We want to get 50% of calls handled by AI, for example, using chatbots. That's another use case. So again, we're putting down the use case to say, this is what we want to do, and this is how we're going to measure it. And it's not just a blank statement of doing AI. We want to do this, and we're going to chase this and make it work, and then we're going to see the value from it. We want accuracy of stops delivered to stores to improve from 79% to 91%. Again, the impact of improving from 79% to 91% means that you're going to have less times when the store will be out of stock or that they've got too much stock. And you'll improve on that profitability based on those numbers. So again, I want to say we cannot just start this thing by not looking at the business side. It has to start here, not start at the technology. It's got to start with what is the business outcome that I want. There's a big one, that's happening at the moment. We want to reduce human capturing of data from 91% to 35%. So use things like, for example, listening to the conversation, converting that text or that voice to text, and then using AI to identify data fields inside that text and pre-populate some of the data that the person is working with. So reducing that time, and not only does it reduce the time, in terms of the capturing of information, but also improves the accuracy of the data. I'm not saying that you don't need a human at all. You still need the human. They still need to check the stuff. But at the end of the day, we reduce the time that they've got to capture the data and also up the accuracy of that. Then start with let's implement AI. So I want to introduce something to you, and I'm sure you've all heard of that, and that is being agile. And being agile means that we don't necessarily have the full plan of where we're going, and therefore we need to start small, do something, improve on something, and then we're going to iterate from there. And this is a typical picture I'd like to share with you is that the one approach is to say, I'm going to have my full plan, and that's the top part of the diagram here, this over here. I've got my full plan of exactly what I want and everything that I've got to do to get my car at the end of the day. In the agile world, we say not exactly that. It's just like a skateboard. Now the guy can already have a little bit of transport by having that. Then we're going to improve on that skateboard by maybe putting on handles. And then we realize that works. Okay, now we're going to put on, a ability to cycle, and then put on into a motorbike, and then finally we've got a car. And as you can see, it's continuous improvement as we went along. It wasn't just one final product at the end. As we went along, we had different products that the person got, and it was just improved every time. And that's the basis of agile. It's to say we don't know exactly what we're going to get, but we're going to every time improve a bit, every time improve a bit. And this might be a mini project in its own right just to get that. But then we're going to take stop here and say, what do we have? What do we need more? And then go to the next level and do again the same thing when we go to the next level. And that's really where agile plays a major role. That we cannot do this in the traditional way where we think we're going to have all our requirements in advance, do it, and then we're going to get the result at the end. No, it's going to be an iteration, really doing it like that. We have to be agile and lean. And in the lean principles, they talk about minimum viable product. What is the minimum thing I've got to produce to actually create value for someone? And I want to, use the term here, minimum viable AI. What's the minimum I've got to do to create some value? And once I've got that, and I'll say minimum, which means I want to start small. I want to start very small, and then I'm going to iterate from that going forward. And now we just iterate and we iterate and we improve the whole time and we improve the whole time. The other thing about agile and lean is that the team is not just one a person that maybe only the IT department or only certain experience or anything like that. We've got a cross-functional team from business people to people that understand processes, to people that understand the IT side, to people that understand the data side. So it's really a cross-functional team that we've got to put together to make it successful. And in this world, the Pareto principle, and I'm sure you know what the Pareto principle is, and that is the thing about, 20% of your customers give you 80% of the value. 20% of the carpet in your company gets used 80% of the time. And nearly on anything we can apply that, 20% of people with 80% of the problems in your company. But in the data space and in AI space, we find that it's even bigger. That 10% of the data makes a 90% difference. In 10% of the data, you can get nearly 90% of the improvement that you can get through AI. You don't need 100% of the data. Identify that 10%. And once you've identified that, you can then deliver that 90% difference that it will make. And then also, as we know, 10% of the processes in the company make a 90% difference. And again, using AI to find firstly via the data and the processes, what are the best processes to improve, and improving on those processes and not on everything. Just on the ones that's really going to make the difference. Remember, perfection kills innovation. So don't try and be perfect. Start with a product. Start with something that gives some value. And once you've got a little bit of value, then iterate it from there. Don't try and say we've got to deliver all the value the first time. Rather iterate it. And the other thing about iteration is that once you deliver the first bit of value, there's very good chance when you take a rain check on it, you say, maybe we've got to change a little bit of direction. And you change that direction to get better value. Again, if you had that approach of we're going to do everything and then only measure, you're not going to have that ability to slightly change direction to get even better value from the AI which you implement. Okay. Don't reinvent the wheel. We saw there, nearly 9 out of 10 projects don't deliver value to the organization because they might not even get into production, or they might not even add value, or we're testing it in the right or wrong way. Happens 9 out of 10 times. So my suggestion here is that think about the knowledge and experience that sits out there already. That my belief is bring it into your team, get some experience into the team, get people with knowledge that's done this before, and really create a much higher chance of success of actually implementing this. Choose a strategic partner. And if you haven't got the experience inside your organization, if you're just embarking on it now, I can assure you don't have the experience. Choose a strategic partner or appoint people that's got the experience. Prevent being on the baby slopes too long. If you've ever gone skiing, we call the baby slopes there where they teach you how to ski the first time. That's called the baby slopes. What we see with a lot of organizations is they stay on those baby slopes very long with AI before they actually go and find something really into production. Don't stay there too long because people lose faith if they keep on spending in the AI area and they don't see the value. The other one is if you work with an external organization, have a combined team that, with your strategic partner, let them guide the whole process and that they can transfer that knowledge to your organization. You have the chances of having a great success in your organization. The other one is technology and data. Minimum viable data, we spoke a few times about that. Don't try and get all the data. It's not going to be beneficial to your organization. There's a lot of technology available that you could get off the shelf or even open source that you can try with. Don't just go and buy. There's a lot of open source that you could potentially try and use it and test the model first. To develop all of this will cost you way beyond what it cost you by identifying the right technology to use. Also, whenever you test, don't test with all the data, test with a subset, make sure it works, and then you can embark on testing it on the entire environment. A lot of companies have fallen into the trap where they would load all their data and then they'll run their models and then they must probably on some cloud provider. And the next moment they get a bill that they don't understand because they've used so much data and used so much processing power to go through it. So you use a subset to test the model, and if it works, then only you take it into production. And the final thing is measure, 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 measure. I can't say that enough. Identify what the business outcome is that you want up front. And as you implement it, make sure that you keep on measuring it. Keep on measuring the business value. And it's got to be measured by the business people to say, yes, I'm getting X amount of extra revenue, or I've saved X amount of cost in the organization by implementing this. So critical that you measure. It also makes life much easier. You get more money, you do more AI. You get confirmed by measuring that we did get the business outcome. These are the business benefits. That's the difference that it makes to the bottom line. And the final one I want to say is make sure that it's not just about doing it once. You have to not only test it, you have to put it into production make sure that the company gets value, monitor it continually, make sure that you can start seeing if you don't get the same type of benefit anymore, that you can detect it and you can alert and say, guys, maybe we've got to change the model a little bit. So it's a continuous process. And in some cases, it could be a self-correcting environment. In a lot of cases, we still need the human being to look at things like this where we do see anomalies and to alert people and actually change the model that's needed. And as we learn from it, we might retrain the models that we've implemented for AI, helping making decisions about what should be done in the organization, the results that we're getting from the data. We might want to relearn our models to do it in a slightly different way. And the final one is, of course, to automate it and then finally to scale and expand it. But the biggest message that I'm going to give you is that don't think that you can do it in a way that's a waterfall approach. It's not the way it's going to work. It's really an approach of learning from implementing small increments of improvement in the organization, taking rain check, and then going to the next level. It is virtually impossible in day one to say, this is everything I'm going to do, work out a plan for it, and think you're going to implement it. Rather take on the approach of doing small things, changing slightly direction as you take rain checks, as you go along. And the final one, which is the most critical, this is once the company start adopting um, the whole AI in the organization. So once you've got your first success, then start identifying other areas that you can use it in. But also important, implement standards in the organization. Don't let everybody can go and do their own thing. Implement standards that when the next person comes along to do a AI project or a business case or a use case, there are some standards already in place that makes life just much easier. The other one is also, this is a more complex one, where you start integrating into business systems where you pull out data in real time and start making decisions on that, or putting data in real time out of systems while, let's say, an agent is on the call with someone, be able to handle that call much quicker than they could normally do. What we cannot forget about is governance. And we know with the POPI Act and all the other acts that's worldwide, we need to protect the data of people. So we need to make sure that through the AI, we don't expose people to data that they're actually not allowed to see. And that we've also seen quite often, that people would go in, they make a beautiful AI, and suddenly the person that's operating at the AI can actually see data that they're not allowed to see because it's not anymore governed by the transactional system. It's now in the AI environment, and suddenly that data is available to that person. And the final thing is to build an AI culture. AI culture of people always looking for improvement in the organization, always thinking about how can AI really change the way that we do things here. The other thing about AI culture is also, I think you realize that we need people that are okay to change quite often. And we nearly need people with a culture that's okay with change because the AI will change things in the organization. So, just as a very last section of the presentation, I'd like to talk about the benefits or the yield that people get from it. And I'm not going to give you physical numbers here. I'm just going to talk about the generic benefits that organizations get. There's no doubt, done correctly, there are huge benefits to using AI in an organization. But the flip side is also doing it incorrectly could cost your company a lot of money without significant benefit to the organization. So we really need to do in the right way. I believe that AI is going to change our future. It's going to change the way businesses will work out there. And those that don't take it on will be left behind. We need to take it on in every organization that's out there. So some of the benefits, faster time to value, so much quicker that we can get value from it. It's a major benefit. Higher ROI, higher profit, bigger turnover, lower cost. All of those things are typical examples of benefits. reduced waste. I spoke about the retailers and their demand forecasting, about planning how much they need at every store. Even in manufacturing, that becomes very important. Um, if you do it correctly, you've got a scalable success. So you can start with something small, and then you can grow it. You can grow that specific case, and also bring in other cases if you do it correctly. You really make it scalable in your organization. Then a decision making, and not only decision making, even to the point of predictive type decision making, where the system of AI will tell you that we predict and prescribe that this is potentially what is going to happen, and these are the good decisions we think you can make. We also see if we do it correctly, especially with customers, and they can get through, the systems much quicker because we're using AI, customer satisfaction goes up, and also we know that the employee satisfaction will go up through that. And finally, if you do it correctly, you're creating a culture of innovation. I can't stress it enough that if you want to succeed into the future, AI is a given, and the ability to innovate is also critical in your organization. The usage of AI will improve the innovation in your organization. And so the last thing that I want to talk about is just quickly summarizing what we've done here. I spoke about setting the scene where I spoke about the growth in AI. You saw it in BPO, in call center, and the general AI out there. Then I spoke about some of the success stories. And it's important that when you start talking in your organization and you want to promote it, that you need to follow the same format that I'm talking about here. So you want to talk about the growth in the AI, you want to talk about the success stories, and it's okay to take a reality check. Let me tell you about what's going wrong out there, because now you're making it real. You're making people think about it. Yes, we've got benefit, but on the other side, there could also be negatives in the organization if you don't do it correctly. And then you give them a roadmap. What is a sensible approach to mitigate why people are failing at this? And you show them that approach, which gives you a much higher chance of also motivating why your organization should be investing in this. And then finally, you've got to show the benefits. You follow that format of talking about the growth, setting the scene, talking about success stories, showing them that you understand that things can go wrong, showing them approach of how to mitigate the things that go wrong, and finally showing the benefits. There's a much higher chance that you're going to get a yes from your organization to assist you with implementing this. And I want to leave you with a very last thought, and that thought is just talking about AI is like winking at someone in the dark. The intention is good, but the impact is zero. I'm going to open up now for questions. I think, Neville, you might be driving this to questions. Am I right?
That is right, yes. I have put a note in the chat, so if anyone's got a question, then please feel free to pop it into the chat. I have prepared a few questions for Dion. So Dion, if we could maybe just have a discussion, go into a little bit more detail. I think the first one that I want to just explore is at that strategic level. You very nicely explained that there was a critical requirement for this to be a top-down approach if AI was going to succeed. So do you want to talk into that a little bit so we can just get and just open up the discussion in that area is this how does an organization set themselves up at all levels so that there's not the shiny ball approach where everybody's chasing after the shiny ball trying to solve point solutions, but that you actually take it to a level where it now becomes a strategic initiative within the organization. So do you want to talk into that a little bit?
Yeah, I think the first thing I want to say is that what we're seeing overseas, is that a lot of organizations are actually appointing people at board level, that their responsibility on that board is to ask the questions about AI. The next thing that they do is they appoint people at exco level that's got sole responsibility for AI in that organization to make sure that you can, make sure that there are not hundreds of different initiatives running out there and they're not integrated in some way or other. And those are the two most important things to identify that. That person, from an extra level, will then go into all the other departments of the organization and start talking to them, identifying potential value that they could create in each of those departments. That then goes to the department to go identify what do they think they can do, and that rolls back again to the extra level to make sure that it's coordinated in the organization. It's not one of those where you just go along and say, everybody just going to do AI. You're gonna have a mess. There's no doubt you're gonna have a mess. It's got to be a coordinated effort. So I do believe highest level, board, exco level, they talk to the departments, ask them to bring things back to the exco level, then you make the strategic decisions about what are the most critical things that's got to be done. Can't be
Yeah.
uncoordinated.
Almost reminds me of the changes that the industry went through when cloud was emerging. You know, I remember sitting in, and the business were not concerned about IT. They had no, they were affected by it, but they were not responsible for it, and they were not driving anything. It was always this dependence on the IT department to make technology available, and then the business used the technology as best they could. And I saw the shift happening where, as cloud was emerging, I remember very clearly there was this one case where the IT department said, "Oh no, we've got a strategic decision on a certain CRM system." And we went around this organization to the different businesses and we asked them, what CRM do you use? And they said, "Oh no, we use the CRM," and it was a cloud-based CRM. And it was different to what IT had prescribed. And we went to another department and they were using yet another CRM. And basically what had happened was that the business couldn't wait for IT and were actually then going, and the business was just saying, "Well, here's a credit card, just go and sign up for that cloud service and we'll implement a little bit of CRM." And I very clearly remember we were at one organization and the IT was absolutely blown away when we told them that, "Oh, by the way, about 22,000 licenses have been bought outside of your, standard into other CRM systems." And so are we yet again at this point where everybody in the organization is like scrambling? I mean, I've been to a conference and you ask it at the conference, how many of you are using AI? And virtually everybody in the audience's hand goes up. So everybody is using AI, but at an organizational level, it's still in that fragmented state. And so how does this change, Dion? How do you what does an organization now need to do to basically make sure that it goes from this tactical or this fragmented approach to now making things strategic? Because I would assume that it's costing more, because if everybody's out there paying for their own AI, if they do pay for it, then they're not leveraging economies of scale, and they're also not leveraging the opportunity to do interdepartmental or cross-functional benefits that AI has to offer. So how do they move forward?
No, well, you're so right. I mean, we've been through, with our grey hair, we've been through a couple of these iterations where people, just start doing things and every department does their own thing. And before you know it, it's all uncoordinated. And with a little bit of effort, you can coordinate much better and get the value. So I do believe there is, whether you call it the data exco or you call it the AI exco, exec, I believe that person needs to be there. He needs to be there and drive it from day one. if you're going to pass on to IT, the focus will be very much purely on the IT and the cost, and that's not going to be on the business value outcome side. So again, I have to emphasize the exec is needed to be able to drive it and make sure that all the departments that are not doing their own thing and with this flavor on it, with it very common. I really believe that's about the only way that you can do it. Otherwise, people will just run in all directions, doing their own thing. So unfortunately, Neville, that is the way that you will have to handle this. Create some compliancy, create some structure, making sure that there are not 50 different initiatives and all not getting value. Because they're all costing more than they should be costing because there's not a coordination of things.
Mm. I see Geraldine's asked a question: how do we navigate a mindset shift, on this topic? I wonder, Geraldine, are you able to come on and just describe, or maybe just put a little bit more information on what exactly do you mean by that? And then there's
Sure.
also, okay, oh, there you are.
Hi, everybody. How are you doing?
We're doing very
Find
well, thank
yourself.
you.
Thank you. Sorry, for some reason, I'm not able to share my camera, but that's absolutely fine. Dion, thank you for an amazing discussion. I'm so intrigued by all your nuggets that you shared with us this morning. Extremely helpful. The one thing that I've picked up is leaders are faced with so many challenges, and leaders do believe that people have talent and it's important to innovate. But sometimes leaders are faced with stuckness because there's so many things that they have to navigate. They have to navigate digitization, different generations, technology, changes in work environments. So how do you suggest we go about getting leaders to take this solution? How do we change their mindset to explore these types of options in the business and show them that there is the potential for good return on investment?
It's a very good question on how do we change the mindset. Change management is critical. That's the first thing I want to say. If you want to create a mindset of how people can start identifying things like that, you've got to change the mindset, and therefore change management is critical. And it's not just sending people documents, it's actually having discussion groups about it, making sure that people understand the value of AI. I've been invited a few times to exco meetings of different companies, board meetings of different companies, and they say, we've got to do AI. And I said, what are you going to do with it? And they don't understand the concept of what it actually means. What are you going to do with it? And I know it sounds weird when I say that, but that's really what happens out there. So I do believe there's education needed in a major way. That's also why you find that 90% of the projects are not delivering value. We can educate them better, especially at an exco level, that they can educate the people in the organization. I believe we're going to have a much higher success by having a effort of changing the people's mind in terms of that. It's a change management process. It's not just the document being sent. It's actually some training that's got to be done. So lots of discussions also that you've got to be on it. I was facilitating a session with a quite a big organization the other day with the Exco, and I was facilitating it purely based on, hey guys, what do you think about AI? And everyone said, oh, we've got to do AI. And then I say, so what do you have to do? And then immediately it drops down, and you can see the excitement nearly goes down. And then you can give them a few back. So what if you guys could do the following? Why don't we explore that? And suddenly the lights start going on. And that is part of the whole change management process of engaging with them and making sure that we can drive it. But I want to say something again in this. You just take someone that's never been in AI and say, you're going to be our AI star. I've not really seen that work. There are cases where it works. You need somebody that really understands what this can bring to the organization and let them drive that process of doing that. And also assist with driving the change management in the organization. Does that make sense, Jeremy?
Yes, thanks, Dion. And then my second question is, how do you motivate to Exco to say, okay, we really need this headcount now. It may cost us X amount or whatever, but we really need this headcount. How do you motivate an extra headcount in this space?
Mm.
So I start always with, okay, what do we want to do? Let's say, for example, we want to do cross-selling to customers. I'm just making it up. Okay, so okay, to do cross-selling to customers, we need to understand the customer better, so we need the data to get there. What do you think is the potential cross-selling? We can sell 15% extra to every customer. What is the value of 15% if we can do that? Now that I know what the business outcome is, that I can sell 15% more to them, I can now say, based on that, this is the cost that I need for it. And what we find typically in the space, that the ROI for things like this is in the region anywhere between 3 and 10 times. If you do it correctly, you can have a 3 times ROI, 10 times. But start with what is the business outcome that you want related to business value, as in rands and cents or dollars. Use that and say, okay, to deliver that, I need 5 people and the technology. That's the cost of that. And there's my ROI. And that's the way I go about doing it. I just want to, let me just share one thing here again quickly with you. I'm just going to share my last screen with you. Because I'd like to I'm not sure, can you see my, not yet. This one here. This is the way I go about telling people. I first set the scene, why we need the AI. I talk about success stories. I would then tell my exco about why things could go potentially wrong. But over here, now start showing them a roadmap. And inside that roadmap, I start showing them how do I mitigate why people go wrong. And in this yield, I talk about the upside we're going to get and the cost of it. And that then produces the ROI. This is storytelling.
Thank you, Dion.
You
Great.
set the scene.
Thank you.
You set the scene, you teach them a bit, you let them sweat a bit because things go wrong. You tell them how you're going to mitigate the sweat, and finally you show the benefits. And that's the way I present to in any situation to a board or to an exco of why we need a certain amount of money.
Yeah, and
Thank
then maybe
you.
to
Great
add,
nuggets.
yeah, maybe to add to that, Dion, I think the other side of this is the consequence if you don't get those people on board, Geraldine. You know, what happens if you don't bring them on board and you aren't able to improve productivity and you aren't enabled to automate the way your competitors are automating, and you fail to understand the impact that AI is going to have generally across the board, because there's a massive impact that it's going to have. And so I don't believe this is a choice of do we or don't we. I believe this is a choice of how fast are we going to enter into it, because you cannot afford not to go this way. I think, you know, the elephant in the room is jobs are going to be affected. You know, AI is going to replace certain jobs, and that doesn't mean that we now need less people. It just means we need more people that are better trained, that have got more skill in utilizing AI, in maximizing its potential. And, you know, the saying, I've heard this now so many times, and I'm sure everybody on this call has heard it. AI is not coming to replace your job. AI is, or you will, AI will replace people that are not using AI. I don't know, I can't remember the exact phrase, but it basically means if you aren't using AI, you are at risk. And I think what Dion is now saying is, okay, so if we all realize that we need to be using AI, how do we make that strategic? Because that's the next multiplier. When the organization says, okay, we're now going to actively engage and change. It's not only mindset, but it's also operating model. We're going to change an operating model so that AI is core to what we do. Then you get that multiplying effect, and then the ROI, it goes without saying. So I think if you're looking at this from a traditional operating model perspective, that AI is just a tool we use, then justifying an ROI is difficult. If you're going to show how this is going to transform the organization, then AI is very easily to, and then that's the idea that Dion has, the story model. I like that, Dion. Is this the model that Pixar uses?
No, it's a method that people actually write. When you go to a theater and you watch a movie, movies are written that way. It's think about it, and let me put it up again. I'll use that as an example now. If you think about, I just want to put it up quickly.
I could ask AI, but I think you can explain it to us.
Yeah. So I mean, if you think about it, if you watch a typical movie, they normally follow this form. They set the scene where you get introduced to the hero. Yes, the hero, and we really like the hero, and all love the hero, etc. And now he even shows us more strength. So now he teaches us a bit more. So I see even better things about this hero. However, in comes the villain, and he starts taking over. You know, oh, now we drop now a whole. So he's taken people to the height of excitement, liking this hero. Now drops to the valley of despair because now I'm worried because this is the thing that we do here. You know, things are going wrong. You know, the hero is not the villain's taking over, and then slowly but surely, the hero starts taking over again, and suddenly there goes our emotions up again. So we're up there when we were introduced, dropped when the villain took over, and now it goes up again. And the reality of decision making follows the same format. You send them more, you push them a bit more, you let them sweat, you show them how you're going to not let them sweat by your roadmap, and then you're going to show the benefit. But people only make decisions when you take them through that emotional roller coaster. Don't just show the benefits. Show the negative also, that they can see you understand what you're talking about. And that's a typical way of getting people to make a decision.
Wow. So I think the one, just to get back to Geraldine's question, I think the one thing is that I think every company should have an active AI training program where every single person in the company is being guided, being taught. There are those aha moments where you can show somebody, you work on spreadsheets. Do you realize that if you pop that spreadsheet into an AI tool, it can analyze that data in a fraction of the time that it takes you to analyze it manually? When it comes to reporting, do you realize how quickly an AI could analyze in-depth research into data that would take, that currently takes a whole team to do? So those ideas where you can start leveraging and allowing creativity to start taking control. But then I think the flip side of that is how do you now strategically pull those things into core business functions so that at that core business level, you're now driving it strategically. So I see.
One more thing to it is I think that nearly every meeting that you've got where you're discussing something, even if it's just a question at the end to say, can AI help us here? That's nearly creating a mindset of realizing it can't be used nearly in anything. And if it starts getting into that type of good discussion, people will start changing their mindset. But Neville, you're totally right. Those that are not going to take up AI are in danger. You take up AI, much higher chance you're going to be okay in your organization. And I'm not talking about you creating the AI. I'm saying you being able to use the AI to your benefit.
Okay, are there any more questions or somebody that wants to come in? We've got a couple of minutes left. Jan, let me put you under a little bit of a pressure here. If you had to choose just one business metric to prove AI's value, specifically in the BPO enterprise, which one would it be? And how would that benefit the BPO?
I'm going to look at more specific insights, video side. I would say let's talk purely about a call center. The first thing I'm going to say is to say a percentage of calls being handled by agents can be replaced by AI today. And I think that is for me a key measurement that you can do in that environment. That is most probably where we see some of the best. There's another one also, which I spoke about earlier. So that's a measurement. How much of the work can we do automatically in the environment? But also in the process of, while we're having, what I like a lot is the one measurement of how much of the data capturing the person has to do can be automated by just listening to the conversation taking place, converting that voice to text and applying AI on the text to identify what's the data. If we can say we can reduce the data capturing by an agent by 70% by doing that, that's for me another big measurement. But for me, the biggest one is how many people can I replace? How many of our calls can we automate when we apply this?
So a couple of things that I can think of, and thinking back to my call center days, is after call work. So when a call is done, an agent sometimes has to do call wrap up. That could be automated. So anything that needs to be updated into systems and third or fourth level systems, that can be automated. The other side is that quality of the engagement can be automated to some extent, so that when the quality assurance people are doing their work, they've already got an indication of these are likely calls that need to be reviewed, and because that interaction is being assessed the whole time, and AI can actually listen to tone of voice, it can listen to responses, it can listen to how that interaction has taken place. And if you're in a call center where you've got 300-400 people on the phone, you've got that automated the whole time, and it's running in the whole time. And virtually at the end of every call, an agent can get a quality assessed score. And I'm sure that would add huge value to call center, to agents' performance, so that they actively can look to improving the quality of their calls. And that to me would be a huge benefit. Okay, let's look at something else. I'll ask one more question, and then I think we can wrap up. I'm not seeing any more calls in the chat or questions. All right, let's go back to the board level, because I do want to explore this idea of how will a BPO succeed. So let's talk about a BPO in the context of a BPO. So let's say at a board level, or even at an executive level, can we compare, I'm just playing devil's advocate here, can we compare the head of HR to the head of AI as a similar type of role? And if you think of it in the context of the head of HR is responsible for people, culture, that type of thing, but the head of HR, of AI, should that be a similar role? Should there be an overlap? What do you think, Dion?
Yeah. Interesting question. Firstly, I've got to say that I do believe that the AI guy should be at the same level as the ExCo member of HR. So I don't think it's, in fact, I think it's going to be more and more of a strategic role in the organization. There's going to be a lot of collaboration between the two of them, because as we spoke about now, the HR is responsible for changing the mindset of people. So there's got to be very close collaboration between the head of AI and HR to make sure that we implement change management and training of people in the organization to change the mindset and the culture. Will there ever be an overlap in terms of the role? I don't think so. I think it's more that the HR must support in a major way.
Yeah, I also want to make a prediction. I think in the same way that that people add value to a company, where someone will say, well, what's the value of your company? Well, obviously you measure it on the performance, on the revenues, the margins, etc., profitability. I believe there's also going to be an element of AI being viewed as an asset within the organization. And some organizations will have a higher value because they've invested more in AI and they've got a much higher or much more intelligent use of AI than their competitor. And in order to get there, it definitely needs executive level intervention and strategic initiatives to be implemented. But
I just want to add that you said, Neville, there that I believe that the biggest asset to an organization does not sit on any balance sheet or any financial statement is their data and what they can do with their data. That's their biggest asset. On the other side, I want to say the biggest cost to the organization is poor communication and conflict. That doesn't sit on any balance sheet or any financial statement. The organization is going to address those two things. On the one side, utilizing data, on the other side, improving communication will assist with utilizing the data. I think you then up for a major success.
Yeah. Okay, well, John, thank you for that. I've enjoyed this discussion. I hope everybody else has. I'm not seeing any more questions, so I think we're going to leave it at that. I'm going to thank everyone for their attendance, and we'll see you next month. And Dion, thank you so much for coming on board this month. Thank you for your participation. Value your contribution to the GBS sector and also your role as executive on the executive board within BPESA as the head of our digital advisory. So thank you for that, and then we'll see everyone next month.
Thanks a lot. Thanks everyone. Thank you, Neville. Thank you, Natasha.